This is a 2014 Toyota Prius Gen 3. Recently it was in the shop for an oil change and front end alignment. After the alignment, I was told that, if there's a slight pulling, it isn't the alignment, that is perfect. It may be something with the calipers. So just to be aware, and I decided, those are the original calipers on this car, so maybe the pins need to be lubed. So that's today's project. With the wheel off, we see the main components of the braking system. They include the brake line brake hose, also sometimes referred to as the brake cable, although it is a hydraulic line. Brake fluid travels through that into the disc brake cylinder assembly, where it presses on a piston, which presses on the brake pads, which press on the disc rotor, bringing the vehicle to a stop. The disc brake cylinder assembly, or brake caliper as it's often referred to, is held in place by the disc brake cylinder mounting, also known as the brake bracket. The brake bracket not only holds the brake caliper in place, but it also holds the brake pads. The brake bracket is held in place by bolts attached to the steering knuckle. The disc brake cylinder slide pins that we'll be removing and lubricating are located in the brake cylinder assembly, or the brake caliper. The brake piston needs to be pushed back to the home position, and a good way to do that is to get a C-clamp mounted on the caliper on a solid side on the back, then come over here, and on the Prius there's a little bit of opening so you can get the C-clamp in there. Then you slowly tighten. You're looking to see this close up, and that lets you know that the piston has been pushed back into its home position. You may have noticed that there's a lug nut on the rotor, and that's just to keep the rotor in place as I take off the caliper and brake bracket. To remove the caliper, we're going to need two tools, a 17mm and a 14mm wrench. The 17 is going to go here, and the 14 on the outside. You're going to turn clockwise to loosen that, and you're going to hold this one in position. That'll keep this from spinning because it's up against this grommet here, and you don't want that to spin. So that'll break the pin loose. There's another one of these down below, and you also want to do that. First thing I'm going to do is just break that loose, then come in with the 17, hold that in place. And it doesn't take a lot of force. And take that bolt out, lay it on the ground, and now we're going to do the same thing to the bottom. As you take off the bottom pin, be careful because now there's nothing holding this in place except for this brake cable, and you don't want to damage the brake cable, so you want to get something like an S-hook that you can grab onto, maybe the coil spring. And you just want to somehow grab onto this so that it doesn't fall and put stress on the brake cable. So there, an S-hook of some sort just holds on to the strut, wraps around, and holds your caliper and keeps all stress from being applied to the hydraulic hose. I don't know if you noticed, one of the shims shook loose as we took off the caliper. So you may want to take some pictures with your phone and just document how things are hooked up, how these clips are in, which way they're facing, whether the curled side is down or up. And that way, if there's any confusion when you go to assemble, you can just always refer back to your images. As you can see, our brake piston has been pushed in. Another way to do it if you don't have a C-clamp is to do it after the fact, after you take it off, and that's to use something like this. This is a disc brake pad spreader that actually puts a plate up against this and locks up against this point here, and then you turn a screw and it pushes the piston back into the home position. It's just the C-clamp is cheaper than getting one of these. I'm gonna take off the shim that's loose here. Don't want it to get lost or bent. So I'm gonna lay it down in a place where I keep the same orientation so that when I go to put it back, that also helps me. There's another shim. And again, got to keep track of how they come off because you'll need to reassemble it. Then here's our pad, and this pad should come right off. Sort of pull on it, and there are these two clips here, top, bottom. These do come off, so make sure you know how they go back on. Here's our pad, and for a car that's, you know, 8.5 years old, plenty of pad on here, so we won't need to replace that. Now we take off any shims on the back side, and in this case they both came off together, so I'll put those away. And then I pulled off the inward brake pad, and again, there's plenty of meat on this. It doesn't look uneven, so I would just clean them off and reuse those. Now there are two pins that are attached here and here, and we want to remove those. That's a 17, and that's the pin that should move freely in and out because the brake pads are going to ride on that. These sit on this boot, so I'm trying not to tear the boot because I don't want to buy another boot. You can hold on to the boot and pull on the pin. If I look at this pin, there's a little bit of lubrication on it, but it's dirty and old because it's the original. This is the way they did it at the factory, and it hasn't been touched since. So I think lubing it's going to be a good idea. Again, we want to make sure that we know where this one came from, because sometimes the upper pin and the lower pin are slightly different, and you want to make sure you put the correct ones back in their place. And there we go. Now you'll notice this one has a little seal there, and that's different than the upper pin, so that's going to go on the bottom. Now if I want to take off the bracket, there are two bolts back here, one here and one down below. And we can break that and take this bracket off. Reason you would take the bracket off is to clean it. Also makes it easier to clean the gunk that's inside where the pins are. So we're gonna go with that. And let's see, I think, yep, that's also a 17. So we'll break these loose. Oh, a lot more torque on this. So I'm gonna see if I can get a persuader in there. And a persuader is a socket with a long arm on it. So it goes back to the physics that you learned about in high school, or maybe even elementary school. This should make it easier to break that nut loose. Okay, now that's loose. I'm going to break the bottom one. Nice thing about Toyotas is they don't use a bunch of different sizes. So 14, 17, those will generally turn a lot of fasteners. Okay, you can see the brackets already come loose. Take out the bolt, and then we do the same thing for the top. And you'll notice, you know, some people like putting Loctite on these, but manufacturer doesn't, so I'm not either. And then this slides out. And this is the brake bracket, and you'll see the clips for the outside, top and bottom. Then top and bottom for the inside. These do come off. You'll probably take them off as you clean this up. This one doesn't look bad. Some people actually paint these. I think this one's just gonna get some brake cleaning spray. I'll probably take off the clips so I can clean around there and make sure that there's no rust. And then we're gonna go inside here, take the seal off, and just flush that out with brake cleaning fluid and get in there and just make it nice and clean so that when we put in fresh lubricant, it just works a lot better. Here on the bench is our brake bracket. The springs are still on board. So what I'm going to do is take those off, and it looks like I may be just able to pop them out by pushing in on one side, because these are actually held top, bottom, and then compressed onto the sides. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to deform them. This has a little bit of rust on it. Again, you want to know where you took these off of, so I'm going to put them down in a way that I know that this is outward right side, and then this one's going to be outward left side, inward right side, inward left side. And again, I'm just pushing in on the clip from the back. Don't distort it. Take your time. Okay, that's one there. Come around to the back. And now these are actually wrapped on the front and back, but there is a little place where I can catch the blade of the screwdriver. And then I can get in there, and that slides out. Do the same for this. And those are out of the way. So now we have our two seals. And what I'm going to try to do is to get the seal to come out. And I don't want to tear it, so I may need the screwdriver just to help a little bit. But be careful that you don't go poking a hole with the screwdriver. It's more of a persuader than it is a blunt tool. And you see part of the seal is coming out. There we go. And so that's nice and wet, which is what we want. We don't want it to be totally dry. Then we'll do the same to this one. And of course, you'll have to get them back in. But you know, somebody else got them in, so you can do it too. And what I like to do is get underneath it, and there's an opening on that side, and so you want to get the screwdriver into that opening, because you don't want to press down and protrude into this, because then you have to go buying parts. All right, so now I have two openings. There's gunk in there. I'm going to get a shop towel, maybe Q-tips, something. I'm going to put some brake fluid in there first and just let it sit for a while so that it has time to break down that gunk. And then we'll just wash it all out, make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll lube it. So we've cleaned everything. I got my synthetic lubricant. You don't want to use anything that's petroleum based. synthetic, like a silicone. This one's specifically for brake parts, so that's what you want to get. You can pick your favorite brand. You'll notice these seals, they look almost brand new, and that's because I cleaned them with just a towel and a little bit of water on the outside, and then I went on the inside and got all the gunk out. Speaking of gunk, this silicone, people are like, you know, don't put too much in here because you'll have to burp it. Two things I want to point out. One, this it's not very tight tolerance, so it rattles around. So if you got too much lubricant in there, it'll find its way out and it'll go into this reserve, right? The other thing is that there is a cut on 1, 2, 3 sides of this. So it's not round all the way to the bottom. So if there's too much grease in there, it'll be able to push upwards. So I'm not saying just glom a tube of stuff in there, but just give it a nice coating of grease. Put some grease inside here so that there's a little reserve of it. And yes, I'm going to stick a little bit inside here. I'm not going to fill it up, but I'm not so concerned that I'm not going to put some grease, because I want this to be lubricated, but I don't want it to be so lubricated that it starts pouring out. Then it gets on the brake surface, on the rotor, or on the brake pad, and then we have other issues to deal with. We now have some lubricant in the hole, in the little pocket that's just inside. I got some in here, in the seal, and now I'm ready to insert this inside. And you should be able to do it without a tool. It just drops in there. The fact that there's grease in here helps it to slide in a lot easier than taking it out. So you just work your way around it and you guide it in, and voila, those are ready. I've taken a Q-tip and just put some lubricant where all the springs are going to go. And now I'm going to put these in place. And hopefully you know exactly where to put them. And if not, you've taken a picture so that you can match these back to how they're supposed to go on this bracket. With all the springs in, we want to get our pins in position. So remember, the one with the little gasket there goes on the bottom. I happen to know that this marking here, 25 VT, goes at the top of the bracket. So I know this one will go here down at the bottom. And I just push it in. And feel that? Nice. Now, what you want to make sure is that this seal goes up over the lip. See if you can see that. There's that lip there above my nail right there. So you want to make sure that you get past that and it's flush up against the back of this pin. So to do that, we just push up on the seal, push down, and it should come over the top of it like that. So now it's in place and it can ride up and down and it's nicely lubricated. And we do the same thing to the other one. Of course, you make sure that you've put lubrication on your pin. And you push in. And you don't need to twirl. I just twirl because it just spreads the grease around. And then you see how the boot just rode right up on that? It's the weekend, so you'll hear lots of power tools in the neighborhood, so I apologize for that. We have our bracket. We have our big bolt. One goes up here, and the other one goes down lower over here. And then our bracket goes in. 25 VT happens to be the top. And then you just need to find it. And it looks like I got it on the first try. Now I'm gonna go for the bottom one. And then these get torqued. I'm gonna put the torque specs on the screen because I don't know it offhand. I think it's like 110, but I wanna make sure you have the right number. So use the one that's on screen. So for the moment, I'm just gonna hand tighten it. Just so it's stable and I can mount everything else on it. So remember, we have our pads, and I've gone and I've cleaned those up so it's nice and green. And this is the outboard pad, and I only know that because I placed it so I knew that it was the outboard pad. It's going to clip into here, it's going to slide in there. So of course, being that that's a place of friction, I'm going to put a little bit of lube. I'm also going to put some lube on here because the shims are going to go over that. And so hopefully that'll cut down on any noise or squeaking that sometimes these vehicles have, especially when the weather gets kind of chilly in fall, spring. I tend to notice some squeaking on the front wheels. I will also lubricate the shims on both sides. They had some kind of lubrication from the factory. So, and this will help hopefully make everything quiet. And you know, the one thing I like about doing my own brake work is I know the quality that went into it, and I know whether I did it right or wrong. There's just one person to blame, and I can take the extra care because I'm realizing that, you know, I may be really picky about how I do things and like cleaning everything very thoroughly, and I don't think most guys in a brake shop or the dealership have the time to do that because they're getting paid to pump out the work. So they can't spend all day making sure your brake job is as pristine as they would do it for themselves. But I certainly can do that with my time. So we drop in the shim. Then there's one more shim that goes on it. That's also going to get a bit of lubrication on the backside. And I use a Q-tips because that just keeps me from getting it all over my fingers. And I don't want to transfer it accidentally onto the brake pad or the rotor. So it's just a neater way of applying. And then this catches right there on top. And that's that whole alignment. And then I just repeat the same thing for the pad on the inward side. Before the caliper can go onto the bracket, I need to torque that down. And it's 101 foot-pounds. 101 on the bottom. 101 on the top. So now we know that's not going to fall apart on us down the road. The specification is 25 foot-pounds. So we apply our torque wrench. We bring in our 17 millimeter just to hold the pin in place so it doesn't rotate. And then you're going to apply your force until it clicks. I've already done that, sorry. To the top and to the bottom. As long as this area is exposed, you might as well look. Check the strut, see if there's any fluid coming off of it. If so, then you need to replace your strut. There used to be a boot there, but like I said, the car is pretty old and the boot started coming apart, so I just took it out. You can check around and make sure that the CVV boots are intact, they're not torn, they're not leaking. So just look around, and if there's anything that looks out of place, it's either leaking or there's a bolt that's missing or loose, then it needs some serious attention. Once that's torqued to 25, then we can take off our lug nut here, get the wheel back on, bring the car down to the ground, and then what you're going to do before you turn on the car, you're just going to gently push on the brake pedal, just slowly, not all the way down, you're not hammering it, just gently push, maybe midway, pump it 2-3 times, and then you'll be able to start. I still have to do the other side of this car, but it's the same thing we've just done here. So if you can do this side, you can do the other side. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.